the people, how you doing? So, it is time for us to compare the Xiaomi 12 Pro against the OnePlus 10 Pro. Now, I understand I haven't really done the unboxing for the Xiaomi 12 Pro yet. Well, technically I've shot some of it, but anyways, point is, this might just be my last video before the exam season really kicks in, and much as I hate to say it, it's gonna be a while before I can make another video again. But yeah, I feel like ending with a photography comparison would be better than just an unboxing, now wouldn't it? So with that said, let's jump right in. And yeah, I guess you could say we're starting off on an easier note because this is not a very difficult image, but it does give us some serious differences in the color processing. You can see how the OnePlus looks far more natural, especially with the greens. Like, all the other colors are fine, but the green is really vibrant and it looks kind of unrealistic on the Xiaomi. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world. I know some people like such vibrant greens. Maybe it's gonna please them, but personally, at least for this image, I think OnePlus is taking a small lead. But this right here, this was completely to test out the dynamic range. You can see the sun in the background and it's being controlled really well. A little bit more control on the OnePlus compared to Xiaomi, just a touch. You can see the highlight radius is a little bit smaller and the roll-off is slightly better on the OnePlus. Again, not a huge difference, but one thing that I do notice is that the OnePlus's sky is really warm, while Xiaomi is doing a much better job at maintaining the proper balance, especially in the upper part. And of course, that wasn't going to be the last dynamic range test, now would it? So in this case, I would say that Xiaomi is doing a slightly better job. I mean, it is keeping a lot of those highlights in control. You can see all the branches in the background. It's completely blown out on the OnePlus 10 Pro, so that's like an immediate leg up for Xiaomi. And despite the fact that it is oversaturating things a little bit, I like the general colors and contrast on Xiaomi, in this case at least. OnePlus looks a touch faded, almost overexposed if you ask me. Now, for the ultrawide, well, this is going to be pretty interesting because if you have seen any of the OnePlus 10 Pro's camera comparisons that I've done so far, there are quite a few. You can check them out using the link in the description, but for the most part, the OnePlus 10 Pro's ultrawide is kind of underwhelming. They're using a smaller sensor compared to last year. The quality is definitely taken a nosedive. I'm putting that quite mildly. Like, the difference between last year's ultrawide quality and detail preservation and this year's, it's markedly different. Now, Xiaomi 12 Pro on the other hand, they are using a pretty good camera, and the quality we'll get into the detail preservation in a few moments, but the colors, I kind of like the contrast on Xiaomi here. OnePlus looks a bit too processed because it's really lifting up all of the shadows. Like, it kind of lacks contrast in my opinion, but you know, I can completely understand that this is going to depend on preference, so I'm not really gonna say one of them pulls ahead immediately, but the details, they tell a different story because Xiaomi is definitely sharper. There is so much more detail in the pavement, and the reason I'm zooming into the pavement is because there we can see the maximum amount of difference in details. Here's another ultrawide shot and you can see the difference in colors and contrasts immediately. OnePlus always tends to go for slightly brighter images just to lift up the shadows, and in this case it is a detriment because if you look at the sun and the way the highlights are being handled, far more blown out, and the highlight roll-off is very harsh. Like, you can see a straight line which cuts off the sky and the blown out area of the sun, while Xiaomi is doing an exceptional job with that. I mean, you can see just how well it blends things together. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, but it is 99% of the way there, while OnePlus is pretty far off. And now, with the main camera, we're taking a close-up of, well, I'm not entirely sure what the hell this thing is called. It was red and it looked cool, so I just shot it. But anyways, you can very easily see the difference in vibrance and saturation. Not to say that either is particularly better than the other, but if you're looking for realistic colors, the OnePlus definitely gets the job done in that regard. Now, Xiaomi on the other hand, now that's an Instagram post right there. Like, if you want vibrant, beautiful colors, that is definitely going to be the way to go, while the realistic ones are going to be from OnePlus 10 Pro. But the reason I'm using the main camera and not the macro camera is because neither have a macro mode. And trust me, I searched far and wide on the Xiaomi 12 Pro because it was very surprising that Xiaomi dropped their macro mode. It surprises me, like, why are phones and like phone companies ditching macro as a feature on their flagships? It really doesn't make any sense to me. But moving on, we have to now check out zoom. So both of these phones feature medium zoom ranges. We do not have anything like 5x periscope zoom or 10x or anything like that. It's 2x on Xiaomi, 3x on OnePlus, but there is a pretty major difference in the sensor quality. Now technically speaking, Xiaomi has a larger 50 megapixel sensor compared to just an 8 megapixel one on the OnePlus 10 Pro. And yes, on paper, I mean, that's a huge difference. And maybe it is, we'll find out soon enough, but here's another 2x on Xiaomi versus 3x on the OnePlus, and I just wanted to keep this here just to show you the consistency. I feel like Xiaomi is generally more consistent in terms of maintaining colors and contrast, and at this point we have seen multiple images that have had really overexposed looks, like in this case here on the OnePlus 10 Pro, and that's definitely not something I prefer. I like that Xiaomi goes for higher contrast and it maintains the exposure much better than OnePlus, in my opinion at least. Next up for 5x zoom, well, this is going to be hybrid on both, and it's going to give us a very good idea how well software can keep up with the sensor quality as well. So for the most part, I would say it's very close. I guess, you know, the fact that there is 3x optical zoom on the OnePlus is kind of compensating for the difference in sensor quality, because it looks very close, and honestly there's so little difference. Maybe Xiaomi has a little bit more sharpening going on, while OnePlus looks a touch cleaner. You know, it's such a small difference, there's really not much I can say here. Well, other than the fact that the contrast is higher, but I mean, you get the point. At 10x, however, surprisingly, OnePlus does a far better job. It's a much cleaner, much sharper image. I mean, the artifacting on Xiaomi, that's what's really throwing it off, because that's the biggest difference here, and that's the reason why OnePlus is pulling ahead. It's very well maintained on the OnePlus 10 Pro, surprisingly so. I don't know why Xiaomi's software is not particularly doing a very good job in this case, but it is giving OnePlus a pretty major lead here. So yes, 10x zoom, in case you want to use it, it's not going to be perfect, but it will be better on the OnePlus compared to Xiaomi. Now then, high resolution with the main cameras, 48 on OnePlus, 50 on the Xiaomi 12 Pro, and well, I must say both are very vibrant, aren't they? Like, Xiaomi is even more saturated compared to the OnePlus 10 Pro, but we're here for the details, not exactly for the colors. That difference has been established already. With that in mind, when we zoom in, there's a 5x crop. Yeah, the detail difference is pretty obvious. I mean, you might feel like OnePlus is not focusing, but trust me, that is the sharpest part of the entire image, and I took I believe 12 or 13 of these images, because the OnePlus, for some very odd reason, it kept smearing details, because I think there was like a very, very mild breeze that was blowing, and like Xiaomi had no problem, but on the OnePlus, somehow there was a shutter lag that kept smearing details. So this is the best photograph I could get on the OnePlus 10 Pro, and I mean, the difference is very obvious. I don't really have to say anything here. So I must say Xiaomi has been keeping up really well. It is actually a little bit ahead, in my opinion at least. But now, we're gonna get into the high resolution on the ultrawide cameras. And this is where, surprisingly, things get pretty interesting. So, you did remember that I said OnePlus doesn't really preserve a lot of detail? Well, in this case, it actually pulls ahead. Because not only is the HDR processing far better on the OnePlus 10 Pro compared to Xiaomi, I had expected that maybe Xiaomi would pull ahead with details, but that is not what's happening here. Because clearly, Xiaomi is kind of screwing it up here. It's smudgy, full of artifacts, and I took like 5 or 6 shots. This is the best I could get. I mean, to be honest, I was so stunned. I took another one, and this time, you know, it was much more even lighting, and that did help a lot. So, you know, if you want to use high resolution, make sure that the lighting isn't too drastic and it's not going to adversely affect your image too much. Otherwise, you're going to end up with not a very pleasing result. Because as you can see, when we crop into 5x, this time Xiaomi is doing a better job. Like, we can far more clearly see all of the details. You know, the droplets of water are much more well defined compared to OnePlus. So in this case, Xiaomi is pulling ahead, but I mean, it's not that good compared to the OnePlus, and kind of surprises me that we can see so much noise and artifacting on the Xiaomi 12 Pro. Now, the reason why I feel like, you know, the OnePlus 10 Pro at least doesn't have a lot of the amazing features that we used to have on the 9 Pro last year is this 150-degree field of view ultra-wide camera, and I mean, it's pretty insane, and you can take some pretty crazy looking shots, but is it worth the sacrifices that we see in photography and videography? My opinion would be no chance in hell. That's just the truth. Because honestly, if OnePlus had kept the same ultrawide camera from last year and just tweaked the software to give us, more consistent colors and all that, I would have been far happier. But anyways, now let us take a look at 2x zoom 50 megapixel on the Xiaomi 12 Pro. Now, of course, there's no high resolution on the OnePlus 10 Pro for obvious reasons, but I did try my best to crop in just to match the zoom ranges. That way we can really tell if there is a difference that 50 megapixel mode can make. And I think it does, because on the OnePlus this is like a 5x zoom, and on Xiaomi it's about 800% that we are cropping in, and still we can see far more detail. Like, I feel that in good enough lighting you can get some really detailed results from the 50 megapixel mode with 2x zoom on Xiaomi compared to the 8 megapixel 3x combination that we have on the OnePlus here. Now then, let's move on to selfies and portraits. And honestly, I was kind of looking forward to this because, neither phone turned out to be perfect, but there are some interesting tendencies here that you're gonna want to keep in mind. So first and foremost, Xiaomi is far more saturated. I mean, we knew that would happen, and I'm surprised that it is so well balanced. It is on the saturated side, but it gives really pleasing skin tones. That's what I'm trying to say here. Because in this case at least, I'd pick the Xiaomi any day. Now there is one major difference here. I do see a lot more detail on my shirt on the OnePlus 10 Pro compared to Xiaomi 12 Pro. I'm not entirely sure why it's smoothing me out there, but it is. So that is maybe one thing to keep in mind. But the moment I turned around and took this backlit selfie, OnePlus immediately pulled ahead. I honestly don't know what the hell was going on with Xiaomi, because that is not a very good image, now is it? The contrast is just not present on Xiaomi, and the crazy amount of warmth that it's adding is really unnecessary, and it just doesn't make any sense as to why it kept doing that over and over. Next up, Selfie Portraits. Well, in this case at least, I think both are kind of blowing out highlights on my face, and I'm not really sure why, because the lighting was broad daylight, but it was still pretty manageable, and the selfie didn't have any issues. I'm not really sure why the portrait selfie is having issues with highlights. I did the same backlit test with the Selfie Portraits, and it's the same story. It goes crazy on Xiaomi. I'm not sure why, but this is definitely a problem, and well, I sincerely hope that Xiaomi can fix this with maybe a software update or two. For rear camera portraits, however, the dynamic range, it's really good on both phones. I see no issues whatsoever, because this was, again, slightly backlit, and there's a lot of contrast that needs to be balanced, and both are doing a really good job here. But what I can tell you right now is, once again, I do prefer the Xiaomi here because of the extra bit of saturation it's adding in the skin tones. And I also think that edge detection is maybe a little bit better on Xiaomi as well. Like, here's another shot, and I mean, you can see the difference, right? There's so much more saturation on the Xiaomi 12 Pro, a bit more magenta in my skin than I would personally prefer, but I do think it looks better than the OnePlus 10 Pro. Now this is of course my opinion on my own skin tone, so keep that in mind. Of course, we needed to have a backlit portrait now. I'm not really sure which one I want to go for, because neither are perfect. Xiaomi on one hand, yes, it is exposing me as a subject a little bit better, so that's good, but the skin tones are completely off. OnePlus on the other hand has, technically it has a more natural look, sure, but it's very underexposed, at least on my face, and I'm really not sure which one I want to go for. I mean, you guys can pick whichever look you prefer. Now, I do want to point out that Xiaomi was a little inconsistent as well. It kept giving this weird gray patch in some of the highlights. I'm not sure why it happened, but it's definitely a software bug, so do keep that in mind as well. Now 2x zoom, this is where Xiaomi pulls ahead. This was bound to happen, because OnePlus 10 Pro, it doesn't allow us to use the 3x zoom, or the 3x optical zoom rather, to take portraits, while Xiaomi does allow us to take 2x optically zoomed in portraits, and it just looks so much better with the details. There's just no two ways about that. And again, personally speaking, I do like the skin tones on Xiaomi. Now then, finally, let us take a look at night mode. This shot was not particularly difficult, but I think Xiaomi is taking a lead immediately because of colors. It just has so much better and so much more natural looking colors. Yes, albeit it is on the vibrant side of things, but the tones are perfect on Xiaomi. While on the OnePlus, the green is completely unnatural. That is not how it looked to my eyes. and there is a fair bit of magenta in the sky as well compared to a slightly more natural look on Xiaomi. Now for the ultrawide camera, and this is where OnePlus really falls apart, because OnePlus's ultrawide night mode in particular, it just doesn't look good. You can see just how insanely washed out it looks. You know, there's no saturation, the contrast is barely there. And Xiaomi on the other hand, I mean, just take a look at the night sky. It looks perfect. You know, there's proper contrast, there's ton more detail. I mean, it's about as good as night mode ultrawide can get. My statement gets even more reinforced because we get significantly more detail on Xiaomi compared to OnePlus 10 Pro. You can see all of those leaves, there's far more definition there. Of course, there is processing artifacts, no one's going to zoom in this much on an ultrawide shot, but this is just to show you guys the difference. Now, with the main camera, we are trying out something a little bit more difficult. This is mostly to see the flaring, and you know, it's basically the same on both phones, maybe a little bit more on Xiaomi, but well, that said, I do think Xiaomi has far better detail. I mean, you can see for yourself that the leaves just have so much more definition, and the fact that it was backlit and there's still so much more detail in here, that definitely goes to show that it does a better job. Now here's another ultrawide, and well, it's the same story. You know, the colors are so washed out, no contrast, it just really doesn't look very nice on the OnePlus 10 Pro. Xiaomi is definitely better with the ultrawide camera at this point at least. Now this shot, the only reason I included this one is because the colors are so wonky on both phones. Now there is some motion blur on the OnePlus 10 Pro, but that's a different problem altogether. The colors are just ridiculous on both, like damn. You know, honestly, I wouldn't even think about considering these as good shots on either phone, but if you really want to know which one is better, I guess it's the Xiaomi 12 Pro because it has less magenta in the sky and more detail. Now the zoomed in night mode, so in this case we're using 2x on Xiaomi versus 3x on OnePlus, and wow, now see, that is some serious desaturation on the OnePlus 10 Pro. And the detail preservation is also far better on the Xiaomi 12 Pro. I mean, from 2x on Xiaomi versus just 3x on the 10 Pro, so technically we should be seeing more detail on OnePlus, but that's obviously not happening. Now this shot right here, you know, I had actually thought it would be a slightly more difficult shot than what it appears to be, because you know, those highlights inside that building in there, it was far brighter than it actually looks. But yeah, both of them are controlling it really well. I do like the amount of shadow detail we're getting on the OnePlus 10 Pro. That definitely stands out, and it's the reason I think OnePlus finally takes a win. And now our final ultrawide for today, and this was a difficult shot. Like you can see, ton of highlights, ton of shadows to expose, contrast to be maintained, night skies to be controlled, and Xiaomi is doing all of it. It is also maintaining the warmth in the shot very well. I mean, I'm impressed by how nice Xiaomi looks here. And I mean, it is pretty obvious that OnePlus is not even coming close here. And so that brings us to the end of this camera comparison. And yes, Xiaomi 12 Pro has a moon mode, but you know, you saw right there, it was completely overcast, so I couldn't really do much about that. But what I can tell you is that, yeah, the Xiaomi's cameras are pretty damn good. Like, I was a little skeptical after what happened with the OnePlus 10 Pro, and I guess you could say that, you know, the high resolution mode with the ultrawide camera on Xiaomi, it's not quite as good as I had expected it to be, but at this point at least, I think it's the best ultrawide that you have in any 2020 flagship. You know, it has the detail, it has amazing colors, it's very consistent. Yes, in human subjects it kind of screwed up here and there, but for the most part, like if you want to take landscape photos and, you know, architecture photos and so on and so forth, like we saw in so many examples over here, Xiaomi is just incredible for it. But with that said, I do hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, do hit that like button, subscribe if you aren't ready, and I'll be seeing you guys again, hopefully soon. Cheers!